So the first value that the first formula we're going to look at is something called future value. In the formula, you're going to see FV. FV just stands for future value. And future value is going to be used for retirement funds. Some other ways you might see it referred to is something called an IRA. Has anyone ever heard of that before? That stands for an individual retirement account. Okay, that's what an IRA is. Or annuity is another word that you might see. And basically what's going on in something with future value is you're making some periodic deposits into some kind of an account and you're saving it for later. Okay. So the biggest thing today, guys, is going to be, because we're plugging these in our calculator, is like calculator issues. So that's why we might want to make sure we have that calculator handy. So FV is the actual future value of the investment. So like what it would be after a certain amount of time. And then it equals, we're going to put an R out in front, capital R, times, and I want you to put a bracket. You can't see. Do you need me to make it lighter? Is higher. All right, in the bracket we're going to have a numerator, and in the numerator we're going to take 1 plus I. I'll tell you what these things are in a second and I will explain them. Would you close that parentheses and raise it to the positive n power? And then you're going to subtract 1 off the back of that. Would you put a fraction bar then? And on the bottom, all of you're going to have is the letter I. Okay. So as I said, the future value, I'm not going to write that because it's right there. Future value is the future value of the account. I, what does I stand for? What you're going to have to do is a little work on I. It is going to be the interest per, box that word, compounding period. Let me give you a little lesson about investment accounts or just even bank accounts in general. Would they give you that interest rate? That is the annual rate. You have to divide it by the number of times that you're making payments. So let's say I said, hey, I have an account that's going to give me 8% for the year, but I'm going to pay in every month. I have to take that 8% and divide by 12. We need to break that interest down into the same kind of payment that we're making. The same thing would be true with, like, on the flip side, a loan. Like if you had a 22% interest rate on a credit card, which is a lot of credit cards do, how often do you make payments on a credit card? Anyone know? Every month? They're really taking that 22% and they're dividing it up over each month. So they divide it by 12. All right, I'll show you in a second. R is the value of the payment that you're making, and N is the total payments. Okay, so I want to make sure everybody has that written down, and then we're going to get our calculator out. Okay, so let's say, I don't know, let's say somebody wanted to retire after 25 years, okay? which these days isn't very long anymore. But hey, big goals, you can do it. I want to know if you invest $1,000 every quarter, how much is a quarter? How many times a year is that? 4, right? Into an annuity with 5% annual yield. Yield means it's like interest, but the bank's paying you interest. How much would you have after 25 years? Yep. Okay, so the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down what the things are, and then I'm going to show you how to write them down and put them in our calculator. We are trying to figure out the future value. We want to know how much you're going to have. So we're trying to figure out in our formula what FV is. So let's jot down some things we know. R is the periodic payment. What's the payment that you're making? 1,000. Okay. I is your interest per compounding period. So what was the annual yield? 5%, right? But be careful here. We're going to divide it, because the word per means divided, by how many times a year you're making your payment. Quarterly means how many times a year? 4. So we're going to, for I, it's going to be 0.05 over 4. N. So we need to multiply totally how many times do you make a payment? Well, you make a payment 4 times a year, right? For how many years? 25 years. So make sure for N you don't put just the years like we did in the interest formula. It needs to be how many payments you've made. 4 times 25 is 100. Okay. Can I move on to what we put into our calculator yet? Yes? No? Maybe so? Okay. So I know that I'm zoomed way in, but this is what I'm doing. I'm setting this up, and then I'm going to show you how to type it in. So I'm going to write FV equals 1,000 bracket. Now, this is a personal preference. If you want to calculate right now what 0.05 over 4 is, that's fine. I'm going to just put it in as 0.05 divided by 4, like that. And then I'm going to put a parentheses around it. And this is to the n power, so I'm going to put the 100 here. I'm just using my formula and inputting the things. And there's a -1 off the back. And remember, on the bottom, all we have is I. So I'm going to put this in a parentheses. Okay. So I'm going to be honest with you, I've been teaching this for a lot of years, and the biggest mistake people make is this next step. So this is what I always do. Instead of trying to type it all in with a load of parentheses, I go in 3 steps. Well, 4. I do this first. Then I hit -1 because your calculator will store your answer. Then I divide by this, and then I multiply by 1,000. Because that's really what you would be doing if you did it by hand, which I would never ask you to do. All right, are we ready? Would you get your calculator out? I will stop and check each thing. Would you first start on the inside and do this? And so the way I'm going to do that is like just the same way. I'm going to put a parentheses, and I'm going to write 1 plus 0.05 over 4. And I'm going to raise it to the 100th power. I'm just doing that part. Just like that. You should get that on your screen. Okay. Now your calculator will automatically store your answer. So if you just hit the subtract key, it should do that for you. Does it do that? -1. Hit enter. Would you confirm that you now get that? Okay. That's what the whole top is. Now we're going to divide by the bottom. Use a parentheses. 0.05 divided by 4. Do you get 197.07? Okay. So if you wanted to, like, as you're showing your work on your project, I would show that what that number is, because then I'll know if you did it right. Finally, you would multiply by 1,000. So by doing that, and $1,000 once you have a job is not a lot, that much of money, okay? You would have close to $200,000. So your investment would be worth $197,072. Okay,